Okay, so a 30-year family business in Port Huron just closed. SCC Parcel Pickup. 100% of their customers were Canadian. They survived the pandemic and even bridged shutdowns, but 2025, it killed them. Then we have CBI USA in Niagara Falls, New York, whose revenue is now down by 50%, and they had to lay off quite a few staff. And the last one, which I'm very familiar with, Hagen's of Blaine, which used to accept about 1,600 packages a day. They're now down to 125. These three businesses, they heavily relied on us to stay alive. I know some of our international viewers were questioning and wondering why do we go to the United States so much just to pick up packages? Well, I'll explain that a little bit later. But I'm going to go through each one of these businesses' stories and explain how each one of them have had to adjust because we're not visiting them anymore. When I say visit, I mean giving our money to them. So I'm going to get started on this article right away because it is a bit of a longer one. And it's titled, Decades to Build, One Boycott to Break, How Geopolitics is Crushing the US-Canada Border Economy. As always, I'll read this out for everyone, for those that are just listening and also for the visually impaired. In Niagara Falls, New York, the Rodriguez family has lost half its revenue. In Blaine, Washington, the Hagens are slashing the staff and operating hours. And in Port Huron, Michigan, the Radatz family has hit a breaking point, closing the doors for good after 30 years. For decades, parcel services like CBI USA, Hagen's of Blaine, and SCC Parcel Pickup thrived on the seamless cross-border linkage, serving Canadians who bypass international fees by shipping the US orders to the border and driving across for pickup. Now, for the international viewers who might not understand this, Canadians like me used to drive down to the States to pick up packages. Why? To save on shipping fees. There would be times where you would buy something online in the United States, and the shipping to within the United States would be free. But the second that it crosses the border, shipping costs can be like $20 all the way up to like $80. I'll give you an example. I used to buy a lot of golf equipment from the States, and to get it shipped anywhere in the United States, it would be free. But the second it crosses the border, I'm looking at about maybe $80, $90 for shipping in US dollar as well, and potentially import fees and other stuff as well. So instead, I would get it shipped to like one of these companies. They'd accept it. I pay like, what, $2, $3 for a package? Or some of them had membership fees or monthly fees. I'd pick it up and I'd be on my way back to Canada. Or sometimes we would actually just stay in the States. We'd head down to like Bellingham or even Seattle or the Seattle Premium Outlets and just make a day trip out of it. But even with potential import fees, we would still end up saving money on the shipping. And sometimes CBSA would just wave us right through. I'm just one Canadian, but there's probably thousands, if not millions of other Canadians that do cross-border shopping like this. So I hope this explanation helps our international viewers kind of understand this article a little bit more. Alright, let me get back to it. Then Taco Tuesday returned to the office. The Canadian boycott of American travel and goods started in early 2025 in response to Taco Tuesday's tariffs and attacks on Canada's sovereignty, has left these legacy businesses fraying. Today, their struggles underscore the structural erosion of a shared binational ecosystem, showcasing how geopolitical tensions manifest on the ground. The broader pullback of Canadian tourism has been well documented. Canadian spending in the US dropped about 24% in the third quarter of 2025. US road trips by Canadians this March are down 35% from 2 years ago. And for 3 months straight, more Canadians have returned from overseas by air than from the US by car. Last year, the total US exports of services to Canada stopped growing for the first time since 2015, excluding the 2020 pandemic anomaly. But this flatlining goes deeper than a drop in vacation spending. These border businesses, whose revenue technically falls under travel categories of service, provide Canadians with a US address to receive and retrieve retail orders. Because Canadians, de facto locals in the ecosystem, represent the entirety of the customer base. Defining the industry struggle as yet another part of the tourism slump fails to tell the real story of its unique vulnerability. These parcel pickup companies are purely catering to Canadians, not to the US domestic demands, said Lori Troutman, director of the Border Policy Research Institute at Western Washington University. So they are disproportionately impacted by what's happening between the two countries. Now, this issue isn't only affecting the parcel pickup companies. Duty-free shops on both sides of the border are also experiencing the same problem. If I use myself as an example, in the early 2000s when I used to go to Seattle a lot for like going clubbing and stuff, my friends and I would always grab a couple bottles from the duty-free and then make our way to Seattle. Well, that's not happening anymore, and we're not buying from the duty-free stores. But then again, I think I'm a little bit too old to go clubbing anyways. Moving on to the actual stores. Port Huron, the breaking point. The Radatz family operated SCC Parcel Pickup in Port Huron for 3 decades. Ron and Laura Radatz took over the business in late 2019 from Ron's mother, Donna, who founded the company in 1995. Every day, dozens of the company's Canadian customers would drive across the border to pick up everything from tires, electronics, to online clothing orders, not just to save money on fees, but also time, as cross-border shipping can take up to several weeks longer. Yeah, I forgot about that one too. The new owners, however, didn't get to fully enjoy this long-established rhythm. First, the pandemic hit, putting their business on hold for nearly 2 years. Then, a series of prolonged closures on the Blue Water Bridge for resurfacing stalled the post-pandemic recovery. SCC Parcel Pickup persevered through every hurdle. It didn't survive 2025, though. It all dropped to nothing last year, said Laura Radatz, 48, when, after all the tariffs and all the claims that Taco Tuesday made, Canadians stopped coming over. It was the nail in the coffin for us. Last June, SCC Parcel Pickup announced its closure. The company's Facebook page was quickly flooded with heartfelt farewell messages from Canadian customers, who even organized a Saying Goodbye the Canada Way fundraiser. It was heartbreaking to close after that long, said Radatz. But we got to the point where it just wasn't worth keeping it open and dumping money into. Economists note that businesses like Radatz are bearing the brunt of the current political standoff. Well, what about the businesses on the Canada side? Just saying. I'll go into a little bit more on this at the end of the video. Border state economies are hit the hardest by the Canadian boycott, said Gary Hofbauer, senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics. They have to endure by far the biggest and most painful impact. For the Radatz family, the impact comes with a bitter realization. I don't think our lawmakers care about small business, said Ron Radatz. I mean, they claim they do, but in the end, it's only about the big businesses. It was a good run, Radatz said in closing. 30 years is a good run. Well, Ron, I'm really sorry to hear about your business, but to be honest, it could have went on for 35, 40, 50 years. But unfortunately, some of your fellow citizens made a bad decision when it came to voting. Now, a question for the viewers. Did anybody use SCC Parcel Pickup? Let us know in the comments below. Moving on to the next company, Holding On in Niagara Falls. In 2025, Canadian travel to the US fell 21%, draining an estimated $4.4 billion from the American economy. Troutman, whose Border Policy Research Institute regularly surveys Canadian visitors to the US, noted that most of them are not just crossing for one reason. When Canadians come, they fill up on gas, they take advantage of popping down to the grocery store, etc., said Troutman. There are definitely a lot of spillover effects here. Annette Rodriguez sees these spillover effects every morning, driving by the fashion outlet malls in Niagara Falls on her way to the office. Now, I just recently did a video on this mall, and they're basically asking for a tax break from the city. But you can see in the photos here, the mall is dead. But just like what I said earlier, when I go to the United States, I'm not just going to pick up a package. I'm going to maybe have lunch and go shopping, head to the Seattle premium outlet malls, basically make a day out of it. What could be like $5 just picking up a package could turn into like $100, maybe a few $100s, just by spending things along the way when you're down there. Back to the article. The mall is dead. It's so quiet here, said Rodriguez, 60, the owner of CBI USA. It's actually very sad to see. Restaurants also took a big hit. Our customers always went to restaurants and to the mall after picking up their packages. See, exactly what I just said. In 1987, Annette's husband, David, launched CBI USA to provide Canadians with a professional Amerifriend and local US address. Operating under the motto, our address is your address, and relying almost entirely on word of mouth, the business is now approaching its 40th anniversary. The Rodriguez family estimates CBI USA's revenue is down by 50% since the tariffs were announced last year and the boycott began. They cut back on staffing from 10 to 7, all whom are now exclusively part-time, and reduce operating hours. It's been more than a year now and the border towns are suffering, said Rodriguez. It's a big, big blow. We didn't think it would go on for a year. Honestly, I was okay with it at first, because I thought it was for the greater good of our country, and that our country would bring money. What the fuck? But now I just don't know what they, the Taco Tuesday administration, are doing. Okay, it's very clear who she voted for. And any little bit of sympathy that I had, I have no sympathy for this company anymore. Now, I didn't read this article fully. I mean, I kind of saw it and I created the video. So I'm learning this as you guys are learning it as well. But for somebody who voted for Taco Tuesday, thinking it was for the greater good of your country, and it would bring you money, and now your business is suffering, I'm sorry, but you did this to yourself. Despite the squeeze, CBI USA has refused to consider closing the doors Annette and David Rodriguez opened to Canadian customers in 1987. We're fortunate to have a lot of faithful customers, said Rodriguez. They told us, we're still coming, we're still going to order. You know, I really notice how my tone changed when it comes to this company. Because hearing a sob story from a company who thought that voting for Taco Tuesday would bring them money and is for the greater good of your country is playing the complete victim for something that you created. I'm sorry, but if this company does close down, I'm not going to shed any tears. Some people might call it tourism, but that's not how we see it, she said. For example, it's a 15-minute drive for me to go to a ball game in Detroit, or go there for a cup of coffee, or go meet family and friends for lunch. We are integrated not just economically or at the deepest level, but as a community. Well, not anymore. And things change. I don't know, I'm getting really annoyed by the border states saying that we are a community, we have history, The Canadians used to always come to visit us. Well, sorry, but things change. And when it's a breakup, you can't expect things to go back the way they were before. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with me on this. For many years, save for the pandemic, that integration was so seamless it was almost invisible. I'm not so sure that until recently, people generally understood how deeply integrated our countries are. Liardi Anderson said, "It's really quite something when you step back and take a look at it. So I have all the confidence in the world that the small and medium-sized businesses can realign to keep the economies on both sides of the border going," she added. I don't know about that. Sounds like you're underestimating how pissed off Canadians are. Moving on. Blaine, the art of pivoting. Gloria Hagen started Hagen's of Blaine's in 1977 as a used bookstore selling paperbacks for a dime. It soon evolved into a package receiving business, eventually passed down to her son Steve and his wife Kelly in 1992. The couple still remembers the glory days during the dawn of internet shopping. Between 2012 and 2015, Hagen's of Blaine was processing about 16,000 packages a day. Now, I can safely say that my packages were probably in that number. And I do remember those days. There would be a lineup outside for people waiting to get their packages. And this street right here, outside of Hagen's of Blaine, would be full of Canadian license plates. I'm sure Hagen's of Blaine's and other US businesses just across the border would love to have those days back again. Back to the article. Today, we get on average 125 packages a day, said Stephen Hagen, 57. The Canadians have cost us about 40% of our revenue, and that's on top of already making half of what we did before COVID. While the historic shift was visible at all border gates last year, Blaine suffered the largest year-over-year drop in inbound personal vehicle crossings from Canada, 25%. Whatcom Council of Government data points to a 61% drop in annual Canadian parcel pickup trips to Blaine between 2018 and 2025. Well done to my fellow British Columbians. Since January last year, the Hagen's family has had to halve its staff down to 4 and slash working hours. We just keep pivoting to make things work for the current environment, current time, said Kelly Hagen, 56. And honestly, we're getting kind of tired of pivoting. Despite the shrinking volume, Hagen's of Blaine is looking forward to celebrating 50 years of business in 2027. Obviously, like any other business in Blaine, we're not in great shape, said Steve Hagen. We're a border town, so everyone took a hit. But we're pretty much adjusted to the new reality. We're paying bills. Now, I wanted to quickly show this chart that they had in the article. It shows the annual personal vehicle crossings, Canada to Blaine. I contributed a lot to this in the past, but I am glad to see it decreasing. But I did want to show this chart to show my fellow Lower Mainland citizens the impact that we're making on Blaine. Alright, last screenshot for this article. That new reality is here to stay, argues Troutman of the Border Policy Research Institute. The low levels of Canadian travel to the US are going to persist for at least a couple years, she said. What we see today is the new normal. For the Hagens, the economic shift feels more like an undeserved penalty. It's really unfortunate that people who make all of these decisions are not affected, says Steve Hagen. But all of the small businesses in border towns are being punished instead. Our countries were like family for a long time, and we're kind of not like that anymore. Now, something doesn't feel right when a US business calls us family. Even though I used to shop at this place, or use their services. Because I have to ask the question, what is family, or what is a friend? Well, in my definition, it's someone that will defend you no matter what. Help you out in your time of need. Pick you up at 3 in the morning if you're at the hospital and you need a ride home. Or take in your commercial flights when your country's being attacked. That would be my definition of a family or friend. Now, the question I have any of these border town businesses or companies that we've heard from, have they considered what's going on north of the border? Have they considered how many Canadian businesses have lost their revenue because of their government? And have they considered how many Canadian businesses have had to close down because of their fellow citizens' actions? If they have, I have not seen a single report in 15 months talking about this. So if you ask me, we were never friends or family to these businesses across the border. We never had a community. We were a customer and revenue for them. But when shit hits the fan, that's when we become family and friends, apparently. Some people are going to say I'm too harsh on this. But then again, I read a lot more articles and reports than the average person, mainly because I have to keep up with due to my channel. But the lack of interest from these US businesses and border town cities about what's happening on the other side of the border. I might get called out for this, but it just shows that it's all about me, me, me. So while I would like to have at least a little bit of sympathy for some of these border town businesses, well, not the CBI one. I mean, that person voted for the Taco Tuesday. The only thing I can say to these businesses is go blame the people that voted for Taco Tuesday, because they are the 100% cause for all of this. Now, a question for the viewers. Did anybody use any of these parcel companies in the past? And I'm actually kind of curious, did anybody use the CBI one? Which the owner, basically, let me repeat it again, says she was okay with it at first, because I thought it would be for the greater good of our country, and that would bring us money. Which basically refers to Taco Tuesday and all, these imaginary policies. If I use CBI, I would be severely pissed right now. But let me know in the comments below if anybody has used CBI USA. To close off this video, I would like to thank Paladia from our Discord server for taking this photo of Brentwood Bay on Vancouver Island, British Columbia. I always love showing photos from my home province, but I do have to spread it out every so often. But thank you Paladia for sharing this with the community. Now I know some of you were waiting for the co-host, and she did make a small appearance towards the end of my video, but for most of the beginning part, she was sleeping. If you found any value in anything I said today, or you want to hear more from a Canadian and international point of view, without the US media bias, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below. That way you'll be notified of my future videos. And don't forget to hit the bell icon and select all as well. Now if you want to see more of my videos, check out the ones that are going to show up on your screen shortly. Thanks everyone, I'll catch you on the next one.